Okay, I'm all set up to drain the oil out of the 24-inch Platinum SHO. I like to put a little vice grip on the tube. Here you can see that. And that keeps that tube from rotating when you open up the drain nut on here. Now the nice thing about this is the way Ariens are designed. They've got a tube that comes off of the engine here, and that tube extends beyond the frame. So when you take the oil out of here, you don't drip it all over the machine itself. The other nice thing is what you can do is you can tip the machine back slightly, and that adds just a little bit more space so that when you get down to the very end, when you hardly have anything coming out anymore, it doesn't kind of wick its way down that tube and follow it down the frame of your machine and gets inside the belly pan and then, you know, makes things just kind of crappy. I always keep a little funnel. I make them out of like soda bottles and things like that, just, you know, cut the end off so that if I run into an issue, you know, when I'm ever changing oil, I can quick put that under and it directs it, whatever. And if I get these all crapped up or, you know, whatever, I just throw them away and I make a new one with a scissor or an X-Acto knife or utility knife or something like that. So again, now in order to stop the oil from flowing out too quickly in the beginning, what I do is I leave the cap, the oil-filled check cap on, and then I open this, and then as it drains out, then I turn that, I crack it. And I don't take it out completely usually, but I just crack it. And that way I control the speed a little bit so the oil doesn't come flying out of here on me. It usually doesn't happen. And then what I do is I pick it up just a little bit when I start, just in case it squirts out kind of the ways, then I can move it out a little bit. So let me see if I can bring you down just a little bit so that you can see just a little bit better than what we're doing right now. There, if I bring you any further down, you're gonna be, the tripod will be tipping over on me. Okay, so we're all set. I've got my vice grip on here, and I'm gonna put, I like a crescent wrench on this. It gives me a better feel when I'm tightening or loosening this. And I'm gonna go this direction. This is super tight. It's not supposed to be super tight. But if you ever run into a situation where this leaks a little bit, rather than tightening the thing up and making it awful tight, what I like to do is I like to take it off and just put a little bit of Teflon tape on the thread, and that tends to do the trick. I've got my nitrile gloves on. You know, there are known carcinogens in used motor oil. So I use synthetic oil in this, but still the contaminants and things like that aren't good for you to get on your skin. So now I'm all set to go. I've got my tube loosened up here, and I'm gonna take this cap and allow it to flow. And it's coming out really nice. It's you know, my snowblower didn't get a lot of use this winter. It got a lot of use in March. We had a lot of snow in March. All right, now it's flowing. I got pretty good control over it, so I'm gonna open up the oil check, and you can see how that kind of increased the flow a little bit there. But I'm gonna drain it out. 38 ounces of oil go in the Platinum SHO. It's a 369cc AX engine. There are 32 ounces of oil in a quart, and so what I do is I have an old plastic measuring cup, and I take that measuring cup, and in that measuring cup I put 6 ounces of oil. So with 32 ounces out of a quart, I add a quart, let it drip in there as best I can. And then after that, I add the 6 ounces out of the cup, and I should be good to go. But it's always important to check, you know, before you start your machine anytime. So now we're getting down a little bit, and you can hear it's kind of gurgling into the pan. again, you can see it just kind of dripping. Now I shut it off, and by simply leaning it forward, and you watch, see when I lean it forward, it shuts the flow of the oil off, but there's still a little bit of oil left in there. So if I lean it forward or backwards some more, I get more contaminated oil out of that engine. And I let it run out and drip out. I try to wait as long as possible until the drips become far and few between, and then I'm good to go with getting the most possible oil and the most possible contaminations out of the machine. People ask me all the time, you know, I had a light winter. Do I need to change my oil at all? And the answer is yeah. Light winters are not really very good for snowblowers. They're made to run. And when the oil sits in the machine gets hot and cold and hot and cold and hot and cold when the temperature changes. Of course, it's metal, and where there's metal and temperature change, you get condensation. Condensation ends up in the oil, whether it's synthetic or it's regular, and moisture is not good for the engine. You got it trapped in there internally. When you run your engine, when you run your machine, it cooks that moisture out of there. So let's tip it way back one more time here. You see we get like one more drop out of it. And we'll lean her back up now. And I'm gonna take my hands off the tripod. And again, getting a great view here, courtesy of my Milwaukee magnetic red lithium light. And I like to take this and wipe it out good, and take a shop towel or a rag and put it into the threads and just run it around a little bit. And sometimes that picks up some of the a little bit of shavings or whatever that possibly get, especially in a newer engine. And this one isn't new, but I just force a habit. Okay, so I've got my my nut here that I'm going to put back on, my cap, and I hand thread it. Never ever put anything in a ratchet or anything like that without getting it started first, whether it's a spark plug or whether it's an oil plug or whatever the case might be. And again, I've got a pair of rubber gloves handy. And now I'm going to work on tightening this up. And I like using the crescent wrench for this because it kind of gives me a good feel of how tight I'm actually getting. And that should be good. Now I'm going to take off my vice grips. And there's a flat spot actually on here, and I try to get my vice grips onto that. And if you use a little vice grips, it's a lot easier to get in there than if you use a big one. Yeah, I suppose you could, maybe get another type of wrench in there, but I haven't found anything that I was successful with, as I am a small vice grips in there. Okay, now we've got the oil drained out. Let's take our shop rag and wipe everything off real quick here. Make sure we don't have any drips that are going to end up on the floor. I'm going to move the spent oil out of the way so I don't kick it and it doesn't go flying all over the place. And I'm going to restart the camera and let me put the oil in the machine. Okay, so we've got the machine flattened out again. I'm all set to go. I've got my oil, I've got a rag, and I always like to put a piece of cardboard underneath when I'm working in my garage or on my garage slab. There's always little, things that happen. I remember one time I was changing the oil on my boat, and I was draining the oil out of it, and it was dripping just perfect into the drain pan. And all of a sudden the wind came up, and I walked away for just a second to get something out. I came out, and there was stringers of oil all over the concrete on my driveway. So we want to avoid that. So pull out the dipstick, and I'm going to clean that off. I'll lay that close by here so that we don't lose it. And I have a funnel. Wipe the top of this off slightly just to make sure there's no dirt or grease. And I used to have this, screw on the top of an old 1 quart oil, and then everybody went to bigger mouths on the oil. So what I did was I cut a soda bottle off and put it in there, and I make sure I always wipe it off and blow through it, make sure there's nothing in it before I put it in, but sticks in there very nicely and cuts down on the messiness of the job when you're trying to put oil in. All right, again, so I like using the synthetic. Mobile 1 is my favorite. I find, especially when I use it on my machines up north at my cabin, sometimes I go up there and it's 20, 25, 30, 35 below zero. And some synthetic oils, will anybody tell you any different, turn over easier than other synthetic oils. And this is the easiest synthetic oil I've found to pull start an engine with. And I don't have any electricity up at my cabin up north, so I pretty much am relegated to starting them by hand. So we'll start adding our Mobile 1. I'm going to get the cap off and dump it into my funnel. And we're going to let it, this liquid gold, go into our engine, let it protect it for another year. And this isn't a difficult procedure. You know, I just, making a short video on this because sometimes guys will ask me, how I change my oil or what I do or what I use. And again, now you can see it goes down to a stringer, but I always like to leave that sit in there for a while and drain out. There's actually a fair amount of oil that is coating the inside of this container. And if you don't let it tip and run in for a while, you're kind of shortchanging yourself and missing out on part of it. I mean, oil's expensive enough. Synthetic oil is even more expensive. I think I paid $8 something a quart for this when I bought it. But works very well, protects the machine, is pretty much impervious to temperature. So when you start it, it starts lubricating right away. It's not stiff when you turn it over. And I think it actually gives you the best protection that you can get. So it's worth a little bit of extra money. It's a couple dollars extra a quart, maybe over a really cheap brand. I look at it as money well spent. So let's see where we're at here. We still got a little bit of dripping going on. You can see, so I'm gonna leave it sit in there just a little bit longer. All right, we'll take that. Again, you don't ever want to drain your oil out onto the ground or onto the gravel driveway or anything like that. Now I'm going to go over and I have my cup. And I have, oops, wrong side. And I have exactly 6 ounces of oil in. You can see it. And I'm going to add this next to my engine here, and then that should top it off, and I should be real close to being good to go. You can just kind of play it by ear and look at the side of a container and say, oh, I got X amount of oil going in, that's enough. But it's just guesswork. So by doing it this way, I come out really close to having exactly what I need in the machine, and I'm not like, well, should I add a little bit more? Shouldn't I add a little bit more? And then I'll let it sit for a little while, let the oil drip out of the funnel into the machine, and then I will, and then I'll check the oil one last time before I put it away. And I do have more service to do on the machine. I have service to do on the auger housing yet. I have service to go around. I take like WD-40 or a similar spray and I go do the hinges like on the chute, the cable pivot points, and then I will tip the machine up in the service position, and I'll take the wheels off. I'm going to do a separate video on how to lubricate the inside of the auto turn shaft, and I'll post that for you to view as soon as I get a chance to do that. And that will hopefully just give you a chance to watch somebody else do that. I know Donnie Boy has an excellent video out on that, and I kind of watched his video. There are a couple other people that have videos out there as well, but I think it always helps to watch kind of a shade tree mechanic, an average person like myself who's got a little bit of mechanical knowledge, go through something, and it gives you a pretty good idea if you're the average person about how long it's going to take you and whether it's something you should tackle or you shouldn't tackle. So just about dripped out here, so I'm going to let that finish up. I'm going to take my shop towel and wipe that off. We'll let that drip just a little bit longer into our machine out of the funnel, and then we'll check our oil level and see where we're at. Just that simple. This is probably the thing that you can do with your snowblower, changing the oil every year, that has the most to do about how long your engine is going to last and run properly. Taking care of the fuel system, draining the gas out like I did today, and changing the oil. You know, there's lots of other things that you should be doing, but these are the imperative. You know, if you take care of the fuel system and drain it out, put stable in it, drain it out like I did today, and you change the oil, you know, in the off season, your machine's gonna run for a long time, really good. You know, there's other things that need to be addressed that are gonna make it easier to maintain your machine down the road, things like that. I've done those in my other videos, but these two, just the taking care of the fuel system and making sure that carb is as empty as you can get it, and taking care of changing the engine oil are the two most important things that you can do to make sure your snowblower lasts a long, long time. And I've never had a snowblower that I've had under 20 years. So believe me, it works. It works. Okay, so this is stop draining out. I'll lay this down on my piece of cardboard down on the floor so it's out of the way. And we will put our stick down in the tube. And I'm trying to do this so you can see it right now. And looking at that stick, you know, picked up a little bit of oil going down there. So I'm going to drop it down one more time. Okay, and bottom out, and then pull it up. Now, if you have trouble seeing where it's at on the dipstick, touch it against a colored shop rag like this, and it'll show you exactly where you're at. Now, this is showing me that I'm just a hair under full. So I'm guessing that as the oil runs down into the engine and it gets in there, then it will fill this up. So I think I'm good to go. I'll start it again I will check the oil again before I start the machine. I know a number of people that have wrecked snowblowers and lawnmowers like this. They take them outside, they put them under a tarp, or they put them in a shed. It's got a gravel floor or something like that, and they've got cardboard underneath it, and the oil in the machine, for whatever reason, there's a bad seal or something, and it drips out during the summer. They go to start it without checking the oil. They think, oh, I changed the oil last fall, it's going to be fine. And they don't check it, and it's low on oil, and they wreck their engine. So always make sure. It's a very simple thing to do, easy to do, and it's a kind of a fail-safe to make sure you always got enough oil in your engine. And again, there's no filters or anything like that on the oil on a snowblower. No air filter either, because there's really no debris in the air in cold weather that it's got to screen out. All right, there's one last thing that I like to do with the engine before I put the machine away. I learned this from my father. And that is, I take the pull start and I pull it until I feel resistance. When that happens, the valves are closed on the engine because it's going into that compression cycle, and it keeps air from moving in and out of the engine in the off season. And like we talked about, you know, temperatures go up and down. It's parked in the garage in the summer. You get real humid weather, you get real dry weather. You know, some days you wake up in the morning and it's 60 degrees out, and it's 90 degrees in the afternoon. Don't think there's any condensation or moisture in that air. So I'm just going to reach across the machine here, and I'm going to pull up until I can feel resistance, good resistance, and then I'm going to put the handle back in. And that should be all that you need to do to put that. That's the basics of what you need to do to put your machine away. Now, I've got other things that, other maintenance items that you can see in my other videos, but if you're a person that doesn't like to fool around with things, you don't have much mechanical knowledge, you're not comfortable with doing things like this, what I did today, anybody can do. Anybody can do. Man, woman, old, young, doesn't matter. I'm sitting on a shop stool the whole time I'm doing this. So, you don't even have to get down on your knees to do what I did today. Again, we changed the oil and we got rid of the gas that was in the carburetor. And then in fall, before we start the machine up, we're going to fill it. And I use only non-ethanol fuel in all my small engines. That ethanol attracts moisture and it gums up carburetors and fuel tanks and it raises all kinds of problems with your machine. So this is Bruce with Blowing Snow for Fun, and I hope you enjoyed joining me for this little short video today on changing the oil, and we'll talk about a couple of the things that I think are important when you do this. And hopefully you're able to do this basic maintenance in your machine before you put it away this year, and then it'll be ready to go in the fall. When you pull it out in October, early November, to start it for that first time and make sure it runs good for the season. You'll be one of those guys that's standing out in the driveway and your machine will start first or second pull, and you won't have to take it into a shop someplace and not get it back until the first 2-3 storms are through and you've had to shovel a lot.